it's easy to have that conversation with Patrick Mahomes, right? Nobody disputes that the Chiefs should pay him, even though there, are numbers showing the difficulty that teams sometimes have going deep into the playoffs or winning a Super Bowl when they allot X% of their cap to a quarterback, something that I don't agree with. We'll get to that. It's harder when you're talking about a quarterback like Dak Prescott, who we are all now focused on as we wait for his long-term extension. That's much more open to debate. Can the Cowboys win if they still, if they give him that big contract he so desires? I think they can. And I object to the notion that, $33 million a year is okay, but $37 million, that is too far. You can't win once you go over that. The difference in money we're talking about is the cost of like a swing tackle, or not even a swing tackle, like a backup guard. Find that value elsewhere. You know what you can't find? A top 10 quarterback, which is what I believe Dak Prescott is. The Cowboys have shown they can't find quarterbacks. They, basically lucked into him in the draft. Find your quarterback if he is a good quarterback, and be a GM. Like I said, look for value elsewhere, because it's the most important position in football, and it's difficult to replace him. It'd be nice to have a quarterback on a rookie deal. They're not going to be in a position to get one.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point, because you talk about if you overpay somebody who is a so-so quarterback, man, that can really set back your franchise a ways. Dom, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just so happy to have Mina on, someone with some sense. When we're having these arguments, I have to yell down at Dan Orlovsky because he says nonsense about different quarterbacks. I can't wait for Mina when they start on NFL Live to watch her destroy Dan's arguments the way that I always destroy Dan's arguments on this show. I love common sense. It's a beautiful thing to have on this show as much as possible. Thank you, Mina.
Oh, all right, Mr. T, I got to bring you into this discussion because you talked about this in our morning meeting. You have a very unique frame of reference on this. You've actually been through this scenario before of whether you pay big money to somebody who might not quite be all there yet.
Right, and jumping off to from Mina's point, in 2016, when I got to Miami, Ryan Tannehill, there was a lot of debate about actually how good he was, and we were talking about giving him an extension about $17 million a year, which is unbelievable. That feels like the dark ages compared to what's going on now. But my point was we could win with him. He is not perfect, and there's a mathematical formula in every GM's office, which is when you have a below-average quarterback, that equals unemployment. So while Ryan Tannehill isn't perfect, you could go win with him, especially if you have to overpay a little bit. And Mina already nailed it, which is, hey, if we have to overpay, let's go take that money. Like, Neek, we could go get another corner. You guys are totally interchangeable. But in all seriousness, you can find another player at certain positions, linebacker and safety, whatever it may be. But you can't win unless you have a good or great quarterback. And if you have to overpay a good quarterback, that's not ideal. But at least you still have a chance to win.
I want to stay on this quarterback discussion, but first, I want to hit Neek with a question. Neek, are you interchangeable? Is that how you see yourself?
Oh, no, we're going to ignore that. He's just trying to get some attention. That's all. Sometimes people, they act out, they lash out when they feel unloved. Because I just told Mina how smart she was, and Mike was sitting there like, oh, but what about me? I'm smart too. So then instead of waiting, he just lashed out. It happens. You do that. I'm a parent. You're a parent. You know how it is, right, Ryan?
Mina, I got to hit you on this discussion, though, with the quarterbacks, because it's interesting. Mina, one thing we were thinking about this morning when we were talking this over was I know you cover preseason games for the Rams, and you got a quarterback like Jared Goff. And I remember all the discussion that was around him. Do they pay him? Don't they pay him? They paid him the big money. And now it looks like maybe that decision is not looking right. Does that sort of underscore your point about whether or not and what you do in these situations with these quarterbacks who aren't quite there, but you're paying them big money?
I think the Rams situation sort of sheds light on, yes, you can pay that quarterback, and maybe he's a guy who's dependent on the talent around him, but your margin for error does shrink when you pay a quarterback a lot of money, right? And we've seen the dissolution of their offensive line, some of the struggles there. Keep in mind, we're still talking about a team that, if the expanded playoffs existed last year, would have been in the postseason and finished in the top half in both offense and defense. But it does make life more difficult. You're absolutely right. Fortunately for Dallas, they are stacked on offense right now. I think the defense is a bit of a question mark, but they have the money to pay Dak Prescott. They can do this. I think they made some bad decisions with other contracts, prior to this with Ezekiel Elliott and Jalen Smith, but it hasn't precluded them from paying Dak Prescott, and I don't think it's going to stop them going forward. Mike talked about Ryan Tannehill's contract, $17 million, which looks hilarious now. Dak Prescott's contract is going to look cheap in a few years, too. That's the way things go in the NFL. Lock him in now before it gets more expensive, something they should have done in the past.
Yeah, and it's a good point. Mike, I have to hit you on that because, look, it just seems like everybody in the world is saying this should happen. This should come together. I know you talked in the last hour about maybe it comes down to the last minute, but at the end of the day, do you think they agreed to a long-term deal before the deadline?
I don't think it does get done because they made a fatal mistake a year ago. They had a lot more leverage, and instead of paying Zeke Elliott with 2 years to go when he's holding out in Cabo, they should have paid their high-character, productive winning quarterback then. He is over the hump on the leverage, and this point bears repeating. He played for $2 million last year. It's easy to play for $31 million, and think about the leverage he would have next year. His number is only going to go up, not down.
Good job, Mike. I think you're smart, buddy. Way to go.
The ultimate compliment. There you go. Never another insult coming his way.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.